right, y'all, we have come to the end of the Gospel of John. So let's go ahead and get into the breakdown of chapter 21. First, we're going to start with the chapter context. The final chapter of the Gospel of John evokes the recent trend of a post-credits scene for films. After the main story has been told, John concludes one last scene to further add details about what is to come. After Jesus' resurrection and appearances, he meets with the disciples near Galilee. A major outcome of this meeting is Peter's restoration to his former status. No finite word could fully explain Jesus' ministry, so John's eyewitness account is only parts of those truths. So let's break this down a little bit more. When Jesus was first resurrected, he passed along instructions for the disciples to meet him in Galilee, Matthew 28, 5 through 10, right? Then he appeared to the groups of disciples at least twice, John 20, 19, and then verse 26. Eventually, the men made their way back to Galilee and are waiting for Jesus there. John refers to the body of water as the Sea of Tiberias, John 6, 1. Reserving the term Galilee for the region, John 21, 1. 7 men are in this group, including Peter and John. It's not clear if Peter is bored, simply needs to earn income, or thinks he is meant to return to his former profession. Either way, when he sets out for a night of fishing, these others come along. In a piece of foreshadowing, their efforts fail, they catch nothing. Oh, I know the story. John 21, 2 through 3. Most of the disciples were fishermen before Jesus called them to ministry. Jesus used miraculous provision of fish to draw Peter away from his boat to become a fisherman. Luke 5, 5 through 11. Now, in a similar situation, Jesus calls the men in the boat to cast again, despite having no recent luck. In dim light at a distance, they wouldn't be able to clearly hear or see who it is who calls out to them. There is a good chance the men remember the early miracle. However, when they instantly feel their net, Peter and John fully realize who is on shore, and Peter dives overboard to swim to the beach. John 21, 4 through 8. I like when stories I can remember, but I don't know where it's at in the Bible, when it comes together like this. This is nice. Though John notes the exact number of fish caught in the net, there is no deeper meaning. This detail would have meant something to those familiar with the Sea of Galilee, probably emphasizing the large size of the catch. Now that Jesus has appeared to the disciples several times, any lingering doubt about his resurrection are gone. John 21, 9 through 14. When Peter bragged that he would be loyal even when other disciples failed, Mark 14, 29, Jesus responded with a dire prediction, John 13, 36 through 38. Peter would go on to deny even knowing Jesus 3 times, and with great emphasis, in the hours before Christ was crucified, John 18, 25 through 27. Jesus seems to remind Peter of his earlier boast, asking if Peter's love for Christ is greater than the love he had by the other disciples, John 21, 15. In this conversation, Jesus twice uses the Greek term agapo when referring to love, while Peter uses the term phileo. I know that one. My pastor says that one a lot. He says agape. Maybe that's the same thing. I just pronounced it wrong, as I always do. These terms have distinct meanings, but they overlap enough to mean the same thing in this conversation. However, the third time Jesus asks Peter, he uses Peter's precise words. Though Peter has explicitly said he phileo loves Jesus, Jesus now asks Peter directly if he phileo loves him. Peter clearly understands the point. This 3-time repeated question echoes his own 3-time repeated denial of Christ. It's also a subtle way of Jesus hinting that just because Peter had said something, is no guarantee he'll act accordingly. John 21:16-17. Jesus called Peter after performing a miracle of providing a catch of fish, Luke 5:5-11. He has once again duplicated that feat, John 20:21-48. Peter denies Jesus 3 times, and Jesus has made Peter declare his loyalty 3 times. Okay. Jesus now offers both encouragement and a dire prediction. Peter is once again called to follow Jesus. However, Jesus poetically notes that one day Peter will be forcefully led with outstretched arms. This is an indirect reference to crucifixion. While a terrible fate, this prophecy also confirms that Peter's faith will never fail again. All right, now, he will be loyal to Christ even to the point of death, just as he once bragged. John 13:37. Okay. Church tradition indicate that Peter was crucified as a martyr for his faith. John 20:18-19. That makes sense. Christ's prediction of Peter's death leads Peter to a natural question. John, who only refers to himself indirectly, John 1:37, John 13:23, John 18:15-16, and then John 19:26, is nearby. Peter naturally wonders what will happen to him. Jesus' response is not harsh, but is blunt. He said, worry about yourself, okay? What happens to John is irrelevant to Peter's faith. Peter simply needs to follow Christ regardless of God's will for other people. Unfortunately, some believers misinterpret Jesus' remarks. Though he is refusing to make a prediction about John, some assume this means John will live forever, or at least until Jesus' return. John makes a point of repeating Jesus' exact words to show this was not the case. John 20:20-23. The last verse of the Gospel, John act as a signature or certification. These words seem to be a combination of John's own writing, the validation of a scribe, and a possible endorsement of a local church. John may have switched from an assistant recording his speech to handwriting at the end of this letter. The reference to "we know that" confirms that other validated John's message. This might be a note included by those to whom John first gave this writing. John ends his eyewitness account by reminding the reader that no single book could contain every detail of Jesus' earthly ministry. Okay, John 21:24-25. All right, y'all, come back for the breakdown part 2.